Welcome and welcome back to the Uncharted Leader. And today it really gives me enormous joy and pleasure to connect and share stories with you today, specifically with a gentleman by the name of Shaun Sargent, who is the founder of Stait. And I really say this with a warm hand on my heart because, you know, there's something really really wonderful about Shaun and, you know, his story and what his, you know, his journey in life, you know, whilst on the one hand, he would certainly say is simple in that he's, you know, just an ordinary human being doing some, you know, with a commitment to his own best life. But if he can share one thing from his own journey to influence others, that's done deal for him. And I love that because I think it really speaks a lot to me about the power of storytelling and what even had me start with the podcast in the first place. And so today, you know, I think if you listen today from that place, knowing that what's happening in the world, we can often find ourselves challenged with how do I be my best self every day? And, you know, maybe that's not possible, that you may occur to you like, well, that's not really easy nor possible to do every day. But just even knowing that we can just be our best every day, no matter what's happening, is a great leap forward to being stuck in a place where we think that might not be possible. But before we do get into and you know, saying more about Shaun and talking about his journey, there's a couple of other things that I want to point out for today's conversation. One is that, and this is something that is, you know, Shaun's really known for, and that is that we have everything we need within us to really fulfill on and create the life that we want and to really be our best selves. Now, that doesn't mean that we always can see what there is, but certainly the answers to what we need are not outside ourselves, that the answers to what we need to fulfill on what's important really does come from within. Now, I know many of you could be in very, you know, in a different place. You know, some of you might be thriving and really flourishing in life for yourself, and maybe you're not having the impact you want directly on others. And then there may be some of you who feel like you're really great at thriving and making a difference in the world for others, but potentially your own self-care is not being taken care of. So wherever you are right now, you know, I invite you today to really look from within for you, to see for yourself about what is the thing that you know that you're truly committed to, that you really perhaps haven't had traction on, that you know deep down if you took a look within that actually you could find some inner wisdom. And I use that word not lightly either, because I think somehow the thread of this conversation, we are going to be talking about things like the power of stopping and having silence, and in the silence comes wisdom, which I just stole off Shaun, by the way, because he said this fabulously. And so welcome. I love it when you laugh and smile, by the way, Shaun. It just brings so much joy. So for my listeners, whilst you can't see this unless you go, you know, listen to the YouTube, which I invite you to go do, but because Shaun just has this really delightful way of being. And so if you do have the opportunity to do that, please go do that. But thank you for joining me today, Shaun.
It's an honor, Kylie. Thank you for having me on. And, you know, what an introduction. I'll try and live up to some of that, but very grateful to be here and to having a chat with you.
Well, actually, let's start there. And I love that you say the living up to, right? Because one of the things that you're a stand for is people just being their authentic self. And I think, you know, we all deep down would say at the end of the day, that's what we long for, is to be our authentic self. And, you know, in a world of our authentic self, there's nowhere, as you've said to me, right, we're here just to, you know, be ourselves. And that's being ourselves is the best version we can be. And I'm going to start actually with highlighting a part of your journey, because, you know, what you do in the world right now is so completely not in the world of what I, you know, you did when you know, got into the world of business, for example. So you're a chartered accountant, you know, CFO of an organization. You've been in the whole numbers accounting game, and now you're in this business of well-being. I mean, how did that happen?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I've always been interested in well-being from a kid. I did schoolboy motocross, and, you know, I was never gifted in terms of, you know, you turn up at a meet and you'd see the kids who could do whatever they did. So I always was looking for an edge. So, you know, whether that was sports supplements, you know, working with my father to save up some cash to buy some supplements that I believed would help me win. or when I played American football, taking supplements to help me win because I was the youngest on the team, the smallest on the team. So it was always an interest to me. My grandfather he was blind from the age of 30, but he was a bare knuckle boxer and the strongman. So I've always had this thing of I want to be the best version of myself. What I didn't understand at the time was what that actually meant. I thought it was just shoveling a load of things down my throat and that would transform me to Superman. It's only like 30 plus years later that I realized, and I don't wish to sound conceited, I am Superman, just as you're Superwoman, just as everybody listening to this is their own super person. And so I've always been into health, but it's only after I met my wife, Samantha, 10, 11 years ago, that I realized what true wellness was. And, I've done spiritual practice for 20, 30 years, but it's really now just opening my eyes to, wellness isn't just one thing. It's an holistic, we're physical, we're, mental, and we're spiritual. So wellness is a holistic approach, but unless the body functions, the rest of it gets distracted. So I've sort of been on this journey. I just want to be the best version of me for me, which is a change because I always used to live with I want to be the best version of me for somebody else. You can't live for somebody else. It's a disaster. Been there, done it. Got a cupboard full of medals of the best for somebody else. But it's only when I met her and that growth together where it was, well, why are you being the best for somebody else? Why don't you be the best for yourself? Which is probably the hardest part of my journey because it's easy to be the best for somebody else. But when you've got to look at yourself and then, see where the little dark corners are or, what you need to work on. And then we have a whole other raft of, I've got to work on it. It must be difficult. When you start having fun with looking at yourself and when you can laugh at yourself, then things start to go a little bit easier.
Well, I love that you used the reference there to laugh at oneself, because when you can find that you can laugh at oneself, it gives you a place to know that you're on the right path. And I notice actually just the humor I found in your explanation of being somebody who thought as teenagers I think we all go on that journey, whether it's as a teenager. Well, certainly I've got teenage kids at the moment, so I notice it a lot, but not only as teenagers, but as we go through adolescence and then our early 20s, absolutely we are human beings who think, oh, just take a few pills and then we can actually feel really powerful, or, we do, and we go live lives like we can burn the candle at both ends and then just pop around and take a few supplements in the morning, or, and expecting that that's actually going to be sufficient, and it ain't. And yet many of us do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can say I've been there. I used to, when I was in my accountant's practice, I used to travel around a lot and I would have, a couple of 6-packs of Red Bull, sugar-free, I mean, that was
sugar-free.
And, I'd be whacking those in like nobody's business just to keep me focused and to keep me up. All I was doing was really burning myself out. And then I'd go home, have a couple of bottles of wine at night just to calm me down. Not a way to live, not a way to live. So, I think it's really important. The whole thing is there is no quick fix and there is no magic pill, but in that you can change it in an instant. You just got to change it.
Yeah, the other thing I want to come back to talk about is something that you're saying about, taking care of self. And I know, you've built a business now, and you've gone through a recent transition with, you founded Spunky, which was predominantly anchored towards men. And now you've expanded that into the world of Stait, which is around talking about our state. So it's performance-based well-being and all those things. I want to talk to this, but more specifically about your view on this, because you talk about making sure that your attention's on being your best self. And I really like that. And, often people, you kind of naturally, when you think about leadership, people go, well, leadership is all about the impact we have on others, right? It's about others. And so there is this myth, I think, that sits in leadership where we believe that it's then about making sure we're showing up for others, our attention's on others. And that's absolutely the case, except how we treat ourselves certainly is actually what ends up driving how we impact or influence others. And so I've certainly found that as a mistake for myself. I certainly went, I put other people's needs ahead of my own without realizing that taking care of my own self-care. So that, the oxygen mask story of not doing that. But the thing that I'm interested in, Shaun, is, your journey in particular and your story around this is why because it sounds like it shouldn't be hard to focus on oneself, right? You go, well, that's easy. I'm just one person. I can handle that. Except the design of our brain is that every human being, if we go on the Carl Jung theory, is that every human being has a dark side. And the truth of the matter is, whilst we show up in the world trying to be polite and great human beings, there is a default wiring that somehow triggers us back from intergenerational stuff, right? That at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have negative scarcity mindset thoughts. We all do stuff that we make ourselves wrong for. Like that, we've got to be willing to be, well, I say, certainly, and I think anyone that I've spoken to in this type of world would say, it's a willingness to be able to tell the truth about that to oneself so that you find freedom in that. So I'm very interested in your view specifically about that journey for yourself.
I mean, you put it so well. I sort of look at it this way. I spent a lot of my life trying to put out the positives about me, trying to convince myself more than anyone else. But we are a duality, and the Jungian aspect of that, we have light and we have dark, we have, good and we have bad, we have positive and we have negative. So if you only focus on the one aspect of it, it's unbalanced and you fall over. So, I've been fortunate to, one of my very, very dear friends runs workshops on this globally. And he's helped me to embrace the dark aspect of myself, because that's completeness, that's the whole. If you only look at half of yourself, you're only ever going to be half a person. So if you look at the other aspects, so then the other part of that, which I found really mind-blowing when I got to it myself, was that which you deny and repress comes back tenfold. So, we have the conscious mind, we have the subconscious mind. And if we're burying things in the subconscious, and the subconscious is some bright spark worked out 40,000 times more powerful than the conscious mind. So, we consciously think of this, this, and this, but when we have a stress or we have a shock or a trauma, our conscious mind is across here dealing with it. And whatever we've repressed in our subconscious comes to power as it guides our thoughts, feelings, emotions. It's a bodily function too. So, to my mind, embracing and finding out who I truly am as a whole really helped me. And when I first met Sam, we were laughing about something, and then it got a bit serious. And she said, "Why are you so angry?" And I went, "I'm not angry." She went, "There you go." And so then it was like, shit, I'm angry. What's this buried anger? I've spent 54 years, trying to be the best I can be. But being the best I can be surely must encompass somehow acknowledging the other aspect of myself, which, in today's society, nobody wants to really look at that. But unless you know who you truly are, how can you ever get to be where you want to be? If you think of it as humans are like a GPS. If you say, I want to go to Sydney, and the car says, well, you're in Brisbane, you have a map. But what if you're not? What if you're in Melbourne? Well, you're never going to get to Sydney because you're lost. You don't know where you're beginning from. So how can you ever find out where you want to go? So, I'm still very much work in progress. I think I'm probably on the first rung of the ladder. But embracing who you truly are is probably the greatest gift you can give yourself.
Wow, I am deeply moved, and I say that because when you referenced anger in the work that was there for me to do was actually that for myself, was realizing the word for me was actually content. I didn't realize, when there was moments of anger, it didn't occur to me like that was who I was like, I was like, hold on, that doesn't make sense. So I try to not be that way, much like what you're saying, right? I show up in the world, just trying to park that and do whatever I needed to make sure that just, and for the most part, I think, Shaun, I think a lot of it got released probably through sport, physical sport and things like that, or going to the gym and pumping it out. And so whenever I would be at the gym and doing it, it would minimize. I wouldn't show up as much. So I think a lot of it got resolved that way. But that's not sustainable. I'm hearing even what you're saying about this and that whole mind, conscious, unconscious, etc. That's almost like the level, keeping it in place because there's no expression of it. But eventually I got to a point where, last year I spent a year seeing a psychotherapist to heal some past-based trauma as a kid. Given that we're in the world of authenticity and storytelling here, at 12 years old, I was sexually abused. And but my brain had told myself to forget about it because I woke up the next day and literally was so scared that I said to myself, I need to pretend that nothing happened. So I did. And my brain had completely forgotten about the incident. But what happened when we went into lockdown, I found myself very angry. And I couldn't work out why. Like, my husband would breathe and I was seething. I'm like, he'd put food in his mouth and I was like angry. And then he'd brush his teeth and I was shitty. And I said to my girlfriend, I said, this is weird. I said, because it's like I actually have no control over the experience of being angry at something that my rational brain tells me there's nothing to be angry about. And so she was the one that said to me, she had this similar experience. She'd had a similar backstory and she went to see a guy who specializes in post-traumatic stress therapy, this EMDR, and said that she really got to the source of it because it had triggered from the abuse and it was unresolved anger. And she said it disappeared in like 6 sessions. So you can imagine what I did. Straight to the therapist. First session, okay, here's what I think is happening. And I don't get why I'm so angry. But so I spent a year, but it wasn't until I actually almost like confronted that moment that back in that abuse that I realized why I had all this contempt was because in the moment it happened, I was silenced of my anger. Like I really felt trapped. And so my experience of anger didn't get resolved, but who I became was very angry towards other human beings. And because I couldn't fit that mold, like I couldn't fit that belief, I buried it because I was like, no, that doesn't fit with my view that human beings are inherently good. So is this conflict? But I tell you, it's not easy to confront oneself when you go, oh my God, have I really got that level of contempt for human beings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what we absorb when we absorb it. And again, this is really something that I'm more and more aware of now, is the subconscious mind will absorb everything, whereas the conscious mind absorbs a fraction of it. So we put kids in front of an iPad now to keep them, it's the electronic babysitter. What are they watching? Because whatever they're watching, they're storing in there. Whatever they hear, whatever they see, from as the beginning of time, definitely till 7, shapes who they're going to be as a person. So it's really, really important that we do the work and look at ourselves, because how do we know what's controlling our daily life? As you've just said, you had no awareness of it because the trauma was buried, because that was the only way you could deal with it. I know for myself, when my mum passed when I was 17, I was so angry at the world. So, I took it out with drinking, fighting, playing really hard contact sports just to fucking hurt people, because that's where it was. And it was only 25 years later when I met Sam, I cried and let it out, was number one. And number two was then the acknowledgement of the gratitude for my mum choosing that journey to give me the strength to do my Dick Whittington journey, if that makes sense. Because had she lived, would my life have been the same? So it's the sliding doors aspect. Would I have been living with a beautiful woman in Australia, or would I have been in the same village where all of my friends still live, probably unemployed, or because it's a pretty poor area where I was brought up. So to turn it around and not have fake gratitude, but to have a real gratitude for what she chose in her life and to acknowledge what she chose. So then that led me to me, which was acknowledging what I've chosen to take ownership for everything that's happened to me in my life. And in that ownership and acknowledgement of that, go, wow, that's led me to who I am today. I'm so grateful. And then people say, oh, that's bullshit, that's bullshit. Well, okay, but it works for me. I'm grateful for everything I've experienced because it's brought me to who I am today. And I acknowledge who I am completely.
Gosh, lost for words. I actually want to call this out at the level of community for others. And because I hear what you're saying, you know, there's so many things that when one says things, it almost occurs in the listening that it's very cliche. Oh, you know, that's bullshit. Well, is it? I think that in and of itself, that response is what we do as a human being to resist actually having to listen to it for ourselves. Certainly knowing, even for myself, anytime I've done well, this is bullshit, I'm done, you know, it really only is another way of resisting having a look. But that's all automatic as part of our wiring too, right? But let's be honest, because, you know, if we look in the world, most people, one of the reasons people don't like to share their stories is because they're hiding something. They've got shame, or they've got guilt, or they've got, you know, and that only comes because we're invalidating ourselves at some level. Now, if we're invalidating ourselves at some level, then we're not present to gratitude of everything and anything that's occurred in life, right? So I'm curious from your view, you know, what did you, I mean, I'm just like, what did you do? Like, how did you navigate that?
Which bit? The looking at self?
Yeah, like what I mean, you know, I know it's not an overnight phenomenon, right? But you're now, and you know, I suppose it might even bring an interesting question about the relationship to where you built Stait and how you started with that. But you at some point, you know, had been on this path where this has happened. But, you know, I suppose from out there in the world, anyone listening who can hear themselves in this as well, knowing that, yeah, there's probably some things that I'm making myself wrong for and I don't have gratitude. I mean, where does one even start? If I hear that, what does one do?
Just start, honestly.
I love that.
We make it so difficult, and you know, I'm very analytical, so
Right.
you know, my analytical brain can question everything. You know, I've got the Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder saying, don't do that, you know, because exactly what you just said, Kylie. It's, you know, for whatever reason, our wiring is designed to keep us where we are. So if I do that, what will happen? If I do this, what will happen? If I don't do that, what will happen? So we like the comfort of the discomfort. We love the suck, you know, and I've enjoyed that. You know, I can be right in the shit and enjoy being in there. And you know, I'm lucky I've got a good support network around me, you know, with Sam, my friends, and so it's easy to do in a safe environment. But I've also had times where it hasn't been safe to do this, and you know, it just depends how you want to go with it. You know, if people think it's bullshit what I'm saying, I'm more than happy with it. I really don't give a fuck, because it's not about them, it's about me. And I think, you know, we in this world we have this virtuous thing of, I'm not selfish. I'm fucking selfish. I'm really selfish, because if I can't look after me, how can I look after anybody else? So all of this, and this comes back to Stait. Stait was created for me. Sam and I created it in its former iteration of Be Spunky, because you know, I'm 54 now. When we were looking at it, it was coming into the 50s. I've got a brain of a 16-year-old. You know, I still want to do all the crazy shit I did when I was a kid. And, you know, I mean, quite honestly, I want to be able to take care of business at every aspect of my life. So she said, well, just do something about it. Now, you know, what do I know about any of this? But where it began was, well, what would I do? What do I require? So from that basis, and, you know, I think I would encourage everybody, you know, listening to this, just look at what you need. What would it be? Take half an hour, switch off the TV, switch off the phone, put down social media, go into a quiet room, just sit in silence and see what comes into your head. Yeah, the first 5-10 minutes may be all sorts of crazy shit, but you know, sit in a silence, use your breath to actually see what comes into your head. You might be fucking surprised at what's actually going to work for you, and then do it. Because you know, like, my greatest regret in life would be not giving it a go. I'd rather do it and regret it than regret never doing it, you know. And when they finally put the lid on me and burn me or whatever they do, I'd like, you know, the plaque to say, at least you gave it a go. Because I think that's basic. So when you come to looking at yourself and, you know, on that journey, yeah, you'll take a lot of wrong turns. You know, I've been up many, many dark alleys, but in that, isn't that part of the hero's journey? You know, I mean, I love now this whole thing, more or less every film we look at is the hero's journey or heroine's journey. That must be a blueprint from the universe somehow of what we need to do. If you think about that journey for yourself and you look through your life, where are you on that now? And the beautiful message of it is all right.
Yeah, I want to come back to something that I know has been a common thread through this, and certainly you've spoken to it a bit with me. In the silence comes wisdom, and you've just referenced there. You know, like if there was one thing that you did, you know, go sit in the room or sit, you know, just stop doing stuff. And I know you've said before, you know, often we think that if we keep doing stuff, that's going to make the difference, but in fact, it's the opposite. Did you find that for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I can be very, very busy. But, you know, you mentioned it before, in that busyness comes a distraction. It's very, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that because I'm so busy. Well, what are you busy with? What's more important in life than looking at yourself? Because if you look at yourself, then surely everything you're busy with will improve. So, you know, I am very capable of occupying my mind so I don't have time to look at myself. But when I take the time for myself, then things tend to go a little bit easier. You know, people say, "Oh, you've got a great life. You're so fortunate." Well, maybe. The reality is, you know, I'm on my journey. Everybody's got a fortunate life. You know, if you think of Mother Teresa, you know, she lived in the squalor, but she had a fortunate life. If you asked her, she would say she had her best life. So who defines what the best life is? Who defines what a good life is? Is it having a Ferrari, 10 houses, 3 private planes? Or is it just sweeping the street and doing a really good job? Because to me, it doesn't matter. We're all part. You said it in the beginning, and I really love that. We are all connected. We are all one. You know, the universe, you know, they've proven this now with quantum physics. We are all connected. You know, the butterfly that flaps its wings, that causes a tsunami halfway around. How do you know? We as this body can't even comprehend it, but us as a being has some level of connection. So, you know, I think people, if they really took the time and just found that silence for themselves, they might find some peace for themselves to who they are. And then they may, once they find out even a little bit of scratching the surface who they are, then where do they want to be? And be careful, you know, as I say, my best friend, a guy called Mike Booth, I remember talking to him about, I really want to start this journey of self-development. He said, be careful, because when you switch the light on, you'll never know life without light.
So true. So true. I do want to put a bit of airtime on your, you know, talking about selfishness, right? And the value of that, actually, because I do want to interrupt let's call it a false perception about that selfishness is a bad thing. Because if, based on what you've shared, right, if we take the view that if everybody was to focus on self to be their best self, that's not a selfish act, that's actually a contribution. Because then what we're doing is saying we're accountable for how we show up in the world. So if we make sure we do that, at the end of the day, whilst we're saying it seems selfish, actually what's occurring is what we're putting out into the world is actually a much better state. And if we did that, if every single one human being on the planet would do that, would we have issues? I mean, would we not have peace because we wouldn't have to worry about the fact that we need to help others because we're all doing that? I mean, to me, that sounds like a perfect way to accomplish what you're out to fulfill on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we've been conditioned around the world selfish. You know, what is that? What does that actually mean? It's because you could be a real selfish arsehole and at the detriment of others. Or, you know, you could be selfish by putting yourself first, but in putting that self first, it doesn't mean putting somebody else second. And that's my definition of it. You know, if my being selfish hurts somebody else, that's not correct. I'm talking about selfish as in I've got to focus on me. Who am I to tell you what to do or anybody else? That's not right. Oh no, but you really help me. It's like, nobody can help you. The only person that can help you is you. And when you get to that, yes, people can walk by your side. People can, you know, be there to support you and cheer you on. But in the end, you've got to do the fucking work yourself. And that's the reality. And so many people, me included, for a long time, wanted people to help me. Help me, help me. I need your help to do this. I need to. And it's like, no, there's only you who's going to do that work for you. So when I talk about selfish, it's like, focus on you, because if you're the best version of you, then people will get that. You know, those who you're supposed to find will find you because you're being your authentic self. Those who aren't supposed to be in your life will leave because, you know, you weren't who you actually were. So like when you talk about your anger last year, that wasn't you being the best version of you. So in your selfishness, you actually explored that for you. Now you're a better version of you, a more authentic version of you for your family. What's wrong with that? And, you know, you mentioned the airline thing. I mean, that's what I really love, because, you know, they don't say, oh, put the mask on for everybody else on the plane, run up and down, see everybody's all right. Even when they talk about the slide, they say, open the door and get off. They don't say, open the door, stay there and usher everybody off. So like, to my mind, it's like, if I take care of myself, nobody else needs to. So that frees them up to take care for themselves. And if I'm the best version of me, if I'm as in alignment with myself as I can be, then the people who are required to show up in my life will show up, because the universal law of attraction, oh, that's where he is, boom. And the ones who aren't will go, oh shit, there's a inequity in the vibration, boom. So that's why I talk about selfish, because I've spent so many years trying to help other people in my accountant's practice, trying to help other people in the businesses that I work in. Who am I to be God? How do I know what you need to help you? I might think I do, but then I'm putting myself above you because I know better than Kylie. That's bullshit. And that's the whole thing with Stait. It's like everything you need, nothing you don't. I don't give a monkeys if you never buy a product from us. One of the whole modus operandi for me is to share information with integrity that allows people to make their own choices. If it's somebody thinks about what toilet roll they wipe their backside with, just because they've read an article on that, and they make a positive difference and a positive change, so they don't buy toilet roll coated in plastic. Just as if your listeners are thinking, what is he talking about? You know, our anus is one of the most absorbent areas in our body. And yet, you know, most of the toilet roll on the market is coated in a plastic film. So we're absorbing plasticides and all sorts of stuff through our backside, and we don't know it.
Oh my God.
So,
I didn't know that.
no. So, you know, so people go, wow, I didn't realize that.
What do they call those things in the States? A bidet, or what? Maybe I need to get one of those.
Yeah. But, you know, then you're spraying water up your backside. And, you know, there's a great film that Sam and I watched the other night called Biosludge, which is predominantly American based, but it does apply to other parts of the world where they take human sewage and they spray it on the land. But in that is the pharmaceuticals, the heavy metals, the carcinogenics, and so on and so on. And people don't know this. So part of, you know, what I like to share with people is just be aware of what you put in and on your body. If you want to eat, you know, fast food, do it, but just be aware of it. If you want to, you know, spray your garden with herbicides, be aware of what you're doing. I don't care what you do. I care that you have the information to make your informed choice. And I think that's where society goes wrong a bit, is we're always being told what to do. I don't do well with being told what to do. I like information so I can make my own fuck ups. I don't need somebody to help me make it.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
I mean, I only need to watch my children. I think my children have been one of the biggest lessons for me in realizing who we are as human beings, and how the reality is no one likes being told what to do.
Exactly.
And we pretend that we're okay with it. You know, we've got this hierarchical model in leadership, right? Which at the end of the day, that's the biggest issue. Is like, hold on, that structure is all about authoritarian, or the fear of being told what to do, and yet being told what to do. It's like, that just not really it's not congruent with the design of human being, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I know you had one of my dear friends on, Heston Russell, some long time ago, and I just love his way of authentic leadership. You know, I think it's really good. Obviously, you know, one of the most elite soldiers in this country, and I think, you know, what he talks about of that authentic leadership, it is authentic. The key in that is authentic. How, if you're authentic with yourself, then you can lead, but you lead by example, not by authority.
Yeah.
And that, you know, if more businesses adopted that sort of way forward, I think we'd see a lot better than relying on authority. I think when you rely on authority, you never get the best from people.
Well, I just really want to thank you for the contribution you've been today. There's been so many miraculous things, I think, inside of what we've shared about, and certainly your story. Before we complete, though, I like to ask people to complete a sentence. If you can finish the sentence for me. A leader is someone who
actually does rather than says, who leads from the front by action rather than words.
Well, thank you for joining me today. And I do want to ask you, so to complete around Stait, and specifically where people can find out more. And I don't want to step over one of the specific things you said around, I think one of the hearts of the work you're doing, which is about everything you need and nothing you don't. So before we direct people about where they can find out more, can you just give me an explanation when you say everything you need and nothing you don't? How does that resonate in the business?
Well, basically, you know, the traditional model of what we're doing is to produce 50, 60, 100 different SKUs of product, and you know, just to get the turnover up and the units out and satisfy the investors and done. Whereas, you know, Stait Be Spunky was actually created for me. So everything that we offer is something that I've created for myself in that selfish world. So, you know, we work with a PhD scientist out of Brisbane whose specialty is in hormone health. And in that, you know, we just got a series of curated products that combine with each other or can be taken separately. And it's basically what you need and nothing extra. So, you know, I really think, you know, people have, you know, they work hard to earn the cash. And what I really would like to be in what we do is, if somebody, you know, commits to themselves and comes into the Stait community, that they find they get a benefit. And if they get the information for free, because we offer a lot of information to people who want to come into the community, great. If they want to buy the products, they get what they think they were going to get. No fake advertising, no fake claims. So everything that they need, nothing they don't. And, you know, our commitment, Samantha and my commitment, is no matter what this business grows to, I will always answer the emails of people who email in. And, you know, we get a lot of feedback from that saying, wow, mate, you answered me on a Sunday, or wow, thanks so much for your reply. Like, fuck, you want to pay some money to us. Why would I not take the time to answer you? And it's not a preachy answer. It's like, no, you know, from my experience, this is what I found work. This is the information. You make your own mind up. I'm not into convincing anybody to come into Stait. I hate the word convince, because it's the first three letters are exactly what it is. It's a con. Yeah, you've made your own mind up. If you want to come in, you're welcome. If you don't want to come in, you're welcome. And, you know, if we could all adopt that, and you mentioned it earlier, Kyle, if we could all just be an allowance of each other, then wouldn't the world be a better place? And that's really what, for me, Stait is. If we can function bodily, then how do we function mentally? and how will the world be? So, our mission is to make it, visible to everybody, and then they've got a choice, and we respect that choice.
It's really beautiful. A great way to end the interview today. Thank you so much. And so for all the listeners out there, to complete and wrap up today, invite you to take action. I think that's a clear motto, certainly. And I should say not so much a motto, probably more a mantra. Out of state is really the only access to anything is taking some kind of action and to look for yourself. And that's the other thing I really loved throughout your journey and what you've said today, Shaun, is, you've really got to rely on trusting oneself and looking from within about what is the right thing that's there for you to do. And, to look at what you need and what's right for you, to not judge yourself based on what you think other people think you might need or what you think the others are doing. Because we are all very different in terms of what we need. And so I invite you to do that. Please be sure to make sure you do take action. And the one action I would say to take is definitely reach out and go visit mystate.com and even share, if you can find a way to share with Shaun about the action you took from today, I so do that, because, Shaun, you really are an extraordinary, generous and giving human being. And I think, I'm really excited to be seeing the impact that Stait has in the community. And thank you for your time and sharing your journey today.
The honour's mine, Kylie. Thank you for what you do. And I'm just work in progress. I'm on my journey trying to be the best I can. And I just wish everybody who listens to this the best with their journey, because it's within you. The wisdom is there. Just enjoy it and enjoy the journey.
Yep, we're all a work in progress, and enjoy the journey, folks. Thanks, Shaun.
Thank you, Kylie. You have a good one.